Hello and welcome back to Burning Questions, the show that answers all your burning questions. Today I have two amazing guests, Nicholas and Hermann. Hi guys.
Hello, Mbali.
Welcome. Thank you for joining me. Appreciate you all.
Thank you for having us on here. Are things okay there where you are, Fan? Because I've been seeing some hectic videos.
Yes, but I think things are okay now. It's just a ghost town, but I think I prefer it like this. Very clean.
Nice and quiet, yeah.
The CBD of my dreams. So guys, let's get right into it. So today's question is, why do South African politicians suck so much? And I think it's a brilliant question in light of what's happening. We are burning, the country's in flames. Nicholas, I'll start with you. Why do you think they are such horrible human beings?
Yeah, it's such a complicated, it's a bit of a complicated question with a lot of ways to tackle it. Because, the first question is, as compared to what, right? Like, are our politicians better or worse than in Iran or in the DRC, where, they literally can shoot you if you don't agree with them? Thankfully, ours don't do that often. They do it sometimes, but they don't do it often. So, yeah, look, compared to other places in the world, I think we're still okay. On another question of why do they seem to always steal and be selfish and all these other things, look, I think we're kind of approaching the question wrong, because I think a lot of people, and this is going to be rather unpopular, but flow with me here.
Okay.
A lot of people seem to view politicians as like this distinct group of people. And obviously to some degree they are. Like, often to go into politics, very often it's good to have an ego, be a little bit, think that you're the kind of person who can save the world and the country. But a lot of the time, politicians really are a kind of twisted, weird mirror vision of the country they represent. Mm-hmm. And if they are out of step with their population, it's because their population has not held them to account. Now, in some countries, you can't do that, because literally if you protest or if you complain, you get shot or jailed. Mm-hmm. Thankfully, in South Africa, for the most part, while you might sometimes get shot or things at a protest, generally not if you're being peaceful. Mm-hmm. And so I think the great problem in South Africa is, despite the fact that we have peaceful methods with which to challenge people through protest, through voting, through all that kind of thing, we don't do it. Not nearly enough. Sometimes we do it, but very rarely. Things had to be very bad with Jacob Zuma as president before people started protesting in the streets against him as president. And it worked. He's now in jail. And that would never have happened if the country had not forced him out. And so I guess what I'm really saying is it's not that our politicians suck because we're not doing anything about it. If we voted in better ones, we held to account. If we protested when they do very bad things, then we'd have better politicians and probably a better country.
Okay. All right. Herman, what's your take? What do you think?
I think there's a lot of truth to what Nick is saying, and I think we should give Nick his dues. Of the three of us, he's the only one who's actually held elected public office.
Yes, that is the disclaimer. The disclaimer I must give is I am speaking a little bit biased here, because I was at one point in a past life for my sins a politician.
And I think that's actually a very useful perspective to have, because in the last year or two, in my time, at the IRR and now with FAN, I've gotten to know some politicians, and they are indistinguishable in many cases from other people I know. The only problem is they are tasked with a job anyone thinks they can do. And in a way that is partly true. But there's a dangerous thing here where the system breaks down. And I think that's where I agree most with Nick. Is firstly, I do think South African politicians suck. Not all of them, but a lot of them.
This is another. Can I jump in very quickly? I think that it's very important to make a distinction between good and bad politicians. There are a huge number of bad politicians. As the joke goes, the 80% of politicians give the other 20% a bad name. And I think that is broadly true. but you must
Yes.
recognize the 20% who do actually give a damn.
Yeah, and where for example, a brilliant politician example is the ward councillor for my parents in Pretoria. Probably one of the most community-minded people I've ever seen in my life, on complaints like a flash, constantly engaging with his constituents. Really, just if you could wish for the perfect ward councillor. I'm not going to say who it is, but if you can wish for the perfect ward councillor, this chap from the Democratic Alliance really, the DA should be proud to have him as a ward councillor. He does so much. And beyond just politics, he does soup kitchens and, charity runs. Really the best community-minded public servant a community could wish for. Yeah. But the problem is that when we look at provincial and national levels, and he's a ward councillor, and I think part of why he is such a good fit for that role is he is daily engaging with the people who elected him. There's a direct connection. I mean, we've got his WhatsApp. My parents have his WhatsApp or his number so that they can WhatsApp him or phone him. They're in a WhatsApp group. He's accessible to the people who he must serve. And I think where that is in place across the world, you get a better standard of politician as a general rule. But the problem is in South Africa, at provincial and national level, we don't have that connection because you only have to please the party bosses at national and provincial level to be a publicly elected representative in a provincial legislature or parliament. You don't have to please the people who you should serve. You only have to please the party bosses. So I think I want to agree with Nick on two levels. Number one, I do think South Africans for a century have been terribly lazy at outsourcing political thinking. Politics and policy and governance is someone else's problem. Yeah. And I think that must stop. And the other thing is there's a systems problem here where the politicians with the most power have a very weak system connection to the ordinary South African people who they should serve. So on the one hand, South Africans haven't taken up the responsibility of making politics their problem, so they've abandoned it to whomever they get. And on the other hand, I think we really have an electoral systems problem where you cannot have that direct line of engagement that you can have at a ward level. And with the changes to the electoral system, it's not going to be a silver bullet, but my goodness, it might just be a bullet.
Okay. So can I also add something as well? Yeah. So we're thinking there's part of the problem is the politicians who built a bad system. Part of the problem is people who are not getting involved. Yeah. But I think there's another thing here, and our colleague Gabriel will probably like this point. Our media, our well-to-do people, our smartest thinkers, our academics, they often praise bad politicians. Yes, if you want to get on the news, if you want to get the most cred with those institutions, if you want to be hailed in the newspapers as a fiery force who's changing the world, you have to make a big song and dance, fiery speeches, threaten people, just generally behave pretty badly, pretty aggressively. I mean, I think to my mind in this case, Julius Malema has built his whole career off of this kind of activity, right? And the media and the academics and so many people have rewarded him every step of the way. In fact, I think this is a problem not just in South Africa, but around the world, where the most fiery, incendiary, and often useless politicians, the ones with no real ideas about how to do anything, or only bad, simple ideas, are given the most attention, the most oxygen, the most praise. And that results in, you get the worst rising to the top rather than the best rising to the top. And that's unfortunate. I can't see, while the ward councillor that Hermann talked about, I can't see him getting a national headline about him ever. Maybe the best he can hope for is a good little piece, a small square of the community newspaper, which just said he did a soup kitchen.
Yes, and
That's literally where
Yes, yes, and because the problem is, and Nick will also know this, politics, when done well, is a thankless task. I mean, this guy is great. Why? Because he keeps people informed. That's not a newsworthy story. Ward councillor communicates clearly and consistently throughout crisis with constituents. That's not a headline. Ward councillor helps pensioner couple get new dustbin in record time. That's not a story. Ward councillor ensures fixing of several potholes through, diligent work over weekend, applying pressure to the mayor's office. The system is so toxic in what it rewards and what it doesn't, both in the media and in terms of elections, that I really think the only way out of this is to rediscover something about democracy that has gotten lost. And that is what I like most about America's original founding ideas, is this thing of a citizen democracy, that you can be a baker in Virginia, get elected to serve as a senator, serve for a bit, do what you can for your community, then go back to Virginia to be a baker. That sort of idea where politics used to be a duty taken on by people thinking they can really make a difference. It's terribly romanticized, it's terribly idealistic, but if we're not going to demand it, if we're not even demanding it, then it's not going to be anything close to a reality.
Yeah. So what the answer that I'm getting from here is that we need to keep these politicians accountable, number one. And in a way, we need to vote, obviously, but vote for someone that you see they're community minded. As Hermann is telling us about the ward councillor at his parents' neighborhood. So yeah, I think you guys answered the question very well, and I hope the viewer at home, you got the answer that you wanted. And thank you guys for joining me for this episode of Burning Questions. I'll see you guys next week Wednesday. Remember to catch this show live on IGTV, on Facebook, and on YouTube. We'll see you guys next week Wednesday.